Okay, in terms of logging in, by the way, just to share a tip for you if you've installed this software at home, you see how it comes up immediately wanting to connect to the database service running, SQL Server service running on my local hard drive, right? Which is why I see this big, long, ugly looking name. That's the computer name / SQL Express. Probably won't even work, okay? It might, but it might not. If you have any trouble doing that on your own PC, the trick I find always works is just to go dot, a period, / SQL Express. Dot / SQL Express. Dot is just a short form referring to the local domain here, the local computer in this case, right? And then Windows authentication, and you should be able to connect to the local SQL Server service running on this PC. Now, there's no point in doing it here, but if you're doing this at home, that's what you'd want to do. Just to check that it actually works, there we go. So I see that I'm connected to my dot / SQL Express. Okay, that's not for use here, but for you at home. I'm just going to right click and disconnect from that one again. So if I were to connect to our server downstairs, right, the main changes I make is, of course, unfortunately, it doesn't always respond properly to the name, so we're safest to use the IP address, right? So this is a case where you're going to get to know this number because you'll be typing it in every day for the rest of the term, and you'll probably go to bed at night if you can't fall asleep. Just start saying to yourself, 192.168.40.206, okay? And that's the IP address of our server here at the college. It actually does have a name, and you can type in the name, but it doesn't always find it from every room by the name. Okay, there's so many different firewalls and routers it has to go through, depending on what lab you're in. This always works. So 192.168.40.206. I think I remember right. Okay. Because I type it every darn day. That's why, just like you're going to. Okay. So now you have to switch to SQL Server authentication, okay, in order for you to connect. Your login will be your Blackboard user ID, and your password should be your student number. Now, how many people around the room, they're reaching their pockets, they're pulling out documents here and there. Another number you're going to get to know after a while, right? Your student number, and away you go. Connect, and away you go. All right, so I'm just going to walk around the room, seeing if everyone's able to connect. So, working in the Object Explorer, it's kind of a handy thing. At least it can get you there sometimes. You don't really need it, so you can just, even if you want, click this little hide pin thing and just let it go off to the side to give you more screen real estate. It's entirely up to you if you like to see it or not. So you can only get into your own. It doesn't do you a lot of good, but later on it's a quick and easy way to see what tables you have and so on, right? Okay. Now, up at the top you'll see a button that says New Query. If you click that anywhere, because of how your account is set up, you'll open a query window in your own database. For me, I have to make sure I'm selected the database I want to work in because I have access to all of them. But when I do that and click New Query, it opens up a script window where I can write my own database script, and away I go. Okay? There's properties, I can just close that. I don't really need that open. So this is the canvas on which you can do most of your work for the rest of the term in terms of working inside the database. So if I have, let me get my PowerPoint here. Right? So remembering my table design chart, I basically want to create this department table. So to do that, I'll use a simple SQL command. I'm kind of jumping ahead. This is covered in other materials you're going to be reading through. But just to give you an idea, I'm going to use a special keyword called create. Get to know it. You're going to be using it over and over again. You use create to create any kind of object. Then you specify create table, create index, create view, create stored procedure, create function, whatever, right? So we start off with create. There we go. Now, SQL is not case sensitive. You can type in all lowercase and all uppercase. And I will not personally penalize you, Marks, on how you do it. It's good if you're reasonably consistent, right? One of the things that often a lot of people like to do is keywords they like to put in all caps. I just hate all caps, so I don't personally do it. But you'll see a lot of people do that, right? So create table, and we have to give it a name. So following our table design chart, and we do have a convention here. Remember when we did our little diagram, our square, rectangle, whatever you want to call it, when we put the title of the entity, which will become the title of the table, at the top, we did it in all caps. So that's the one thing I will try to do here for this course, is put that in all caps. So department, and I have an S on the front, but that's okay, I can fix that. Now, with the create table statement, basically I need brackets, and I put a semicolon. Now it's going to complain because there's nothing in the brackets yet. Now, typically though, how you see these written is either you can leave the top bracket up there if you want, or some people put it down, and you just put white space in between the two. White space does not count for anything, it doesn't hurt. You can have as much white space as you want in SQL, okay? Then we're going to define each of our fields that make up this table. So following my table design chart, I have DEPT code. I have caps lock on. I told you I'm dyslexic. Okay, and just some white space, even a space will do. And then I want to give it a data type, right? So we decided on char 4. So I just type char 4 and a comma. Next is my department name. Now some people use a tab, right, or a space. It doesn't really matter, it's just white space. And then varchar 30. Okay, and then DEPT budget. And decimal 9,2. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, okay, well, that's the last field. We're done. And that would create the table, but at this stage, though, we're missing something. What's the other aspect? Looking at our table design chart again. Okay. What's the other third column over there? Constraints. Right. Okay. So we haven't specified which field or fields make up the primary key. There's actually two ways we can do that, but so we don't confuse you too much. Sometimes I find if they show me two ways to do something, I get mixed up. So we're just going to consistently do it with the constraints defined at the end of the table definition. Okay? So basically I want to make this a primary key. So I have to go back up here because I'm not done. Put a comma. If you don't, no problem. You'll just get a little red squiggly. And there'll be an explanation of saying, you know, it couldn't understand it and whatever, right? And you'll quickly figure it out. So a lot of people put an extra line of white space before, but it's only white space. It's not needed. Constraint. Keyword shows up in blue. So we're going to add a constraint to the table. Now, of course, it's going to be the primary key, but one of the nice things about doing it at the end here is it gives us a chance to name our constraint, right? We've named the table, but you know, if you're going to have your little pet constraint inside the table, you want to name it as well. Might seem silly, because actually it will just generate its own automatic name if we don't give it one, right? But the reason why names are important is they show up later on in error messages. So when you're building a client application and you do something that offends some constraint, right? You go to insert a duplicate record or something, the error message that comes back will actually have the name of the constraint. And that's useful because in code you can check for that and know what error caused the problem, right? So in terms of a convention here, some people put capital PK for primary key because this is going to be the primary key constraint. And then the name of the table, and then an underscore, and then the name of the field. So PK department, DEPT code. But that is just a name, right? It doesn't actually do anything. If I spelled it wrong, it won't complain because it's just a name. All right, now we say what kind of constraint. So the constraint, the name of it, primary key, and then in brackets, we just put what field or fields, if there's multiple ones, that we'll just comma separate the list, make the constraint. So it's DEPT code. For now, I'll just get rid of that so we can see everything. Okay. So no comma after this, because that is the last thing that makes up the create table statement. Okay, so I'm going to execute that, and we'll see how many errors I have. Hey, I actually got it okay. It says down below, commands completed successfully. Right? Everyone good? Okay. Now, how do we know it worked? Well, let's go back to Blackboard. If we go into the weekly folder, okay, we're in week 2 now. Up here I have insert scripts for department and employee. So let me grab my department inserts, click on that. Oh, I don't want to open with Notepad. Well, I'll just say save file, I guess. Funny it came up with Notepad. I don't know why it would. Usually it knows the association. So there's my department inserts in my download. So I can get that into SQL Server in any one of a number of ways. But one of the things I can do is I can drag and drop it, right? I can drag this. Oh, notice it said type SQL file. SQL files are just text files. Just they have the extension SQL so that it knows to associate it with SQL Server. So I can drag and drop it. Notice it opens its own query window in the same database, right? And what we see are 3 insert commands. Now we're going to come back and we're going to focus more on the insert, but I mean we brought it in here so A, we can have the fun of seeing some data in the table, plus it's a way to double check. If I built the table the correct way, then these, according to the table design chart, then these insert statements should work. So insert into department, right? Supplying values for our 3 fields, okay? The code, the name of the department, and the budget, right? Now it's complaining there because it doesn't see the department because, well, it should. Let's just run it. It should work. There we go. And you see 4 comments being fed back, 1 row affected. Because each is a separate command, so each gets its own conversation with the database and its own feedback to say 1 row affected. Instead of saying 4, okay, it was done as 4 separate operations, inserting 1 record at a time. Okay, so now we've made our department table. I could keep working in this or that. It doesn't matter. They're both connected to the same database. But just for the fun of it, let's look a little bit down the road. If I go select star from department, that's how we pull data out of tables. The select command is one of the most commonly used SQL commands. So far we've seen create. We use that to create the table. We've seen the insert command to put some data into the table. Select is used to query and pull data out. Now if I just click the run button right now, because it's in the same script with my create, I'll get an error message saying, hey, I can't create this table because it tries to do the whole script. Bit of a tip then for you. If I just want to execute part of what's in a script file or script window, all I have to do is highlight it. So by highlighting that, when I click the execute button up top, it just executes whatever I have highlighted. The danger is that sometimes you select a whole bunch of stuff and you're missing one character, right? And you leave it out of the selection, then you'll get an error message. But I'm okay here, so I'm just going to execute my select statement, and yay! There we go.
So did you drag over the department portion we downloaded?
It just opened in its own window, because when I dragged and dropped it in Management Studio.
Just drop it?
Yeah, just drop it. And I executed it here. Okay. The IntelliSense, to be honest with you, the IntelliSense in this tool always seems to be running a little behind. So that's why it's complaining it doesn't see the department table yet, because actually every window is also on its own connection to the database. So it just takes it a while to realize that, oh, that guy over there, his connection, he's created this table. Executing it worked because it actually is there, just that the connection doesn't see it yet. In another minute or two, those red lines would go away. Okay, so we have succeeded in actually, oh, no, don't want to do that. Come on, desktop, I guess that'll do. Where'd you go? Right, and we see the result pane down below where the data from my table is being returned as a result set from my select star meaning everything from the department table, right? Question? How did I get that? Oh, okay. Did your inserts give you error messages? Were you able to run the inserts? Oh, okay. All right, good. By the way, there's also, you notice down here there's a tab for messages. And that says 4 rows affected. So we get a message to tell us that our one command, this time, select, returned 4 rows, because that's how much data there was, right? That's the difference, because it's one command, so it gave one message telling us how many rows.
There's an error coming up here. David?
Yeah?
There's an error here. Would you mind zooming out so I can see your
Yeah, I'll zoom out.
There is already object named department in the database.
Ah, that's because you executed the create again, right? If you just want to do your select, highlight it, and then execute. And then it won't execute anything that isn't selected.
Where?
Okay.
Yeah, so I hate to be jumping in. Where do we move the database? Like, so I downloaded it. It's in my downloads.
Okay.
I moved it somewhere else. Like, moved it to my actual personal document.
Excellent question. I'm glad we'll wrap up with that one. Okay. The question was, where does the database go? Like, I've downloaded the script file and so on. Well, the script file you can save. It's just a file. You can put it on USB, you can put it in your student share, whatever. The database itself is living down in IT. It's on a server. You can shut off this computer, go away, come back, and the table with all its data will be there. It doesn't matter what computer you log into, because the database is down in the server in IT.
So when I select star from department, I mean, it wants to grab onto the database. And that's just a specific title for it right there?
That's the name you gave that table, right? And you inserted data into that table. So it's just selecting. Now, just maybe the final thing, if I just wanted to say the department names, right? Instead of selecting star, I could say select, and see I am getting some IntelliSense here now, right? I can just say, oh, department name from department. I'll highlight that command. And now I just get the one column returned, right? Because that's what we call the projection of the query, is what's referred to in the select clause itself. Instead of just being lazy and putting star, I'm being specific. I want this, okay? And of course I can comma. Oops. Right? So I can change the order as well. Remember we saw a minute ago the code was the first column in the results pane, then the name, and then finally the budget.
You didn't need the comma after department code?
I don't need one, because that's the end of the list of fields I'm selecting. By the way, it's a common practice as well to go like that. Kind of helps you separate and see this is the projection, the select clause, followed by the from clause. Later on, we're going to learn a whole bunch more. We're going to have where clauses, where we have criteria to filter. We're going to have order by clauses to sort the data in different ways. So lots more to come, but our time is up for today. So you'll notice in the week 2 folder, there are some pre-week tasks. Those are those videos to watch on all the different data types that are used in SQL Server. Try to please watch those before our next class on Wednesday. Okay?
Are we saving this?
It's everything you've created is saved on the server. Your script that you wrote, you have to save yourself, right? So your create table statement, just go under File, Save. It'll probably say SQL query 1.as, right? And then you can just do a file save, and that way you'll save your create table statement. All that's saved in the database is the actual table itself, but your script that you wrote to create the table, you need to save that. Okay, thank you very much, folks. So we'll see you on Wednesday, and then we'll, by the way, there is a assignment posted in the assignments area, so you can start working on that as well.
No,